Good morning. I'm so happy to see you guys here today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Jenny Clausen. I am the program director for JA Inspire, which is the junior achievement program that is running this webinar today. So we're so excited to have so many of you here. We have an incredible speaker today. I honestly feel, and I have a PhD, a little bit underwhelming compared to Lennon. He's pretty amazing. So we are so excited to have our education leader, Lennon Audrain, with us today. He is the youngest graduate ever from Arizona State University's Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, where he is currently a PhD graduate. He is also the former Arizona State president and national president of Educators Rising. And he is currently a career and technical education teacher in education professions at Skyline High School in Mesa, Arizona. Shout out to Mesa. And most importantly, of all of the things that I just shared with you, the most important thing about Lennon is that he is a junior achievement alumni and was the mayor of Biztown when he attended as a student. We love our alumni. So before I present Lennon, before we pass it over to Lennon, I wanted to let you know, we do have the live Q&A feature up and running as part of the webinar. So as Lennon is sharing, if you're like, oh my gosh, I have a question for him, wait, please throw it into the Q&A that's down at the bottom of the screen. And we will get Lennon all of your questions at the very end. He'll answer everything at once at the very end. So we're so happy to have you all here today. Thank you so much. And I would like to present Lennon Audrain.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So my name is Lennon Audrain. Who am I? A little bit about me. I am a high school CTE teacher. So I teach education professions. It's a course for high schoolers who are interested in becoming teachers. I was a former Latin, Spanish, and English teacher here in Arizona and in Massachusetts. And so world language is my love and what I've done. I'm adjunct faculty at Rio Salado College. I'm finishing up my PhD right now at ASU, and I'm an alum of Rio Salado, Arizona State, and Harvard. And I'm going to dig into a bit about how role models helped me to get there today. So I want to start off by saying, what is a role model? A role model is a person whose behavior in a particular role is imitated by others. And that's the dictionary definition. And that's like sort of hard to translate into real life sometimes. And so what I want to do is go over just a few of the characteristics or traits that I think role models have. It's not who a person is, but instead a role model is what a person does. So I'm going to give you a minute to read some of the things on this list. And while you're reading some of the things on this list, I want you to think about an individual who embodies one of these things, who practices one of these things, who acts in this way. This is a pretty long list. And so as you're thinking about these people, you're probably like, well, I have one or two people that are energetic and respectful or humble and insightful, but I don't have anyone who's all of these things. And that's totally okay, because not every role model is or has all of the actions or characteristics on the previous slide. And that's why you should have multiple role models. So what I want you to be thinking about is where you can find role models. And I'm giving you two categories for it: in your personal life and in your professional and your community lives. So in your personal life, you might have role models from your home, your extended family or caregivers, or maybe your friends. In your professional life, you might have individuals from school, work, or participating in organizations. And so I'm going to go and dig into a bit of my own personal role models, give you a way to think about how to build and get your role model network growing, and then give you time to ask some questions about my experiences and how role models have helped me to get to where I am today. So my first role models are my parents. Some of the characteristics that I think my parents have: they're supportive, they're understanding, they're reliable, and they're kind. When I ask my friends, some of their role models aren't their parents. Some of them are their uncles or their aunts, and that's totally okay too. And so it really started when my parents both attended Arizona State University. So my mom is from Thailand, and my dad is from Oklahoma. So they both met at ASU, as my dad was majoring in agribusiness and my mom was majoring in accounting. And so they met at ASU in the 90s. And that's really where my college journey started because my parents went to college. But lots of individuals as well, right, don't have parents that went to college. You might be first generation. And so as we're thinking about people in your personal life that can help you through the college process or through finding a career, it's important to maybe reach beyond for those individuals that don't have the expertise and experience that you need as well. So my parents really set me up for success. And so what happened? I ended up graduating with my bachelor's and my first master's degree from ASU at 19 years old. And I ended up getting my second master's degree from Harvard at 21. And before that, I had finished my associate's degree in elementary ed before I graduated from high school. And so my personal role models gave me all of those characteristics, right? They were supportive, they were kind, they were caring, that enabled me to do these things. They weren't the people that were actually doing them, but they were the team around me that helped to make this possible. The second is my professional role model is Rachel Mann. So Rachel Mann, some of the characteristics I think about Rachel, she's clear, she's poised, she's engaging, she's dynamic. And one of my favorite stories that I always recount with Rachel, I was actually just texting her this morning, and I'll be at a conference with her later today. Everyone asks, oh, how did you get in touch with Rachel Mann? It was with an email. And so I sent this email out when I was in high school because I knew I wanted to be a teacher in high school. And so I wanted to join what at the time was called Future Educators Association. And my high school didn't have a chapter. And so I simply reached out to Rachel Mann and I said, hello, my name's Lennon. I'm a sophomore at Brophy Prep in Phoenix. We don't have a chapter of FEA at our school, but I want to join FEA. Is there a way I can register without belonging to a chapter? And it was that very email that set me up on what I would consider the rest of my professional journey. And so I have the screenshot of the email here just for you to take a look to see how simple it is to start and to reach out to potential role models. It doesn't have to be something super complicated or something you have to overthink. Just starting a conversation sometimes can be enough. So what did it lead to? Like I said, Rachel is a public speaker. We'll be at a conference actually later this week presenting different sessions, but we presented together across the country. Rachel coached me to winning national public speaking championships. Future Educators Association is now Educators Rising. It's actually the club associated with the class that I teach now at Skyline High School. And then eventually, Rachel supported me as I served as the president of Educators Rising, what was Future Educators Association, as the national president. And so Rachel's commitment to me as a student, as a role model, someone who I could reach out to, someone that I could go to when I had questions, someone who was supportive all from the start of an email, right, are the people that you're looking for when you were thinking about role models. The last role model I have is Chibli Balcom. Chibli Balcom was my high school Latin teacher. And I have a photo of myself as a Latin teacher when I taught high school Latin back in Boston on this slide. And I want you to just think about, right, you probably have teachers that are like this at your school. These are probably the role models that you are thinking about right now as I'm listing off these characteristics. Chibli was inspiring, she was motivational, she was committed, she was selfless, and she really helped me to discover that I wanted to be a teacher. And so I ended up teaching high school Latin when I was 20 out in Boston. I had students that were just a few years younger than me. I taught Latin out here in Arizona, and I still hang out with Chibli, my high school Latin teacher, as interesting as it may sound, because now she's a role model that I can go to whenever I need help with things in my classroom, things in my personal life. And so you'll realize that your role models over time are people that become mentors and friends. And again, finding Miss Balcom when I was in high school was not challenging. Finding a role model does not have to be challenging. It can be someone in your high school. It can start off as simple as an email, or it can be someone that you already know in your community. So I want you to be thinking about these points when you're thinking about how do I find role models and what kind of role models am I looking for? First, you should be thinking about how many role models you have. You already have plenty of role models in your life. All you have to do is take a look around. And so it might even be helpful to just count and to think, okay, how many role models do I have in my community or around me that I would identify as a role model? The second is the quality of the relationships. So thinking about how each role model meets their needs. So I'll go in later to talking about how each one of my professional, community, and personal role models meet these 4 requirements. But I just want you to be thinking, not every relationship is going to meet every need. And so as you're developing role models, you should find different role models based on different needs. My professional role model helps me with my professional needs. My personal role model helps me with my personal needs. And some of them can cross over, but the point is to develop lots of role models for lots of different reasons. The third is the structure of the relationships. So I want you to be thinking about how you're connected to your role models. Think about how they're connected to one another. Do your role models have different backgrounds, expertise, and insight that maybe other individuals don't have? Those are the types of questions, again, you should be thinking about how many role models, the quality of the relationships, and how you're connected to those role models. And then finally, you should ask yourself, okay, I have all these people that I really want to reach out to. I know what needs they meet. I know how they're connected to one another and what different backgrounds, expertise, and insight they have. But the question you have to ask yourself is, do you know how to activate those relationships when you need something? It's not enough just to have the people in your life. You also have to be able to know how to activate those role models when you need something. And I'm going to give you some tips at the very end of this presentation to do just that. So the first, obviously, my parents, I have two parents. Those are not the only two personal role models that I have, but for the sake of going through those 4 points, right, I have two role models. The quality of the relationship, they meet a lot of my socio-emotional needs, my needs for care, my needs for being understood. The structure of that relationship. I go to my parents when I needed lots of help with figuring out and navigating my school and personal life. So that was the purpose of that relationship. And I knew, right, that if I ever needed something, I could go to either of my parents and I could just simply ask them about it, and they would help me. So again, think through those 4 points as you're thinking through your own role models. So your quantity, your quality, the structure, and then how to mobilize them. And so I'll give you an example. When I was in high school and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, I went to my dad and I just sat and I talked with him. And he, right, that structure, he was a teacher. He gave me insight about what it was like to be a teacher. And then he said, well, if you want to be a teacher, why don't you think about taking some classes on being teachers at the local community college? And so my ability to mobilize that relationship was my dad, having that conversation with my dad, and then him giving me the tools that I needed to explore my own career. For Rachel Mann, the quantity of the relationship. If you see those other people in the photo, John Martin Ash Rigsby is actually an assistant principal now in Phoenix Union. Sam Melendrez is a really good friend of mine. Rachel actually just moved to Pennsylvania. And so again, when we think about like that structure of the relationships, knowing Rachel isn't just knowing Rachel. Knowing Rachel is also knowing John Martin Ash Rigsby, is also knowing Samantha, is also knowing the people that Rachel knows. And so when you know one person, you're now exposed to all of their network as well. The quality of my relationship with Rachel. So Rachel helped me, again, as I was thinking about being a teacher, as I was thinking about my professional life and my career, she was a great resource and a person to go to. The structure of the relationship. She has an expertise in the workforce and like thinking really big about the future of work. And so when I think about those things as I'm teaching CTE or I have questions about my own program, I go to Rachel and I turn to Rachel because she has that expertise in that area. I wouldn't probably turn to my dad or my mom, right, if I were having a question about the class that I teach, because they really don't have any experience with that. That's why having another role model is really important. And having multiple role models is really important because not every role model can answer every question for you. And lastly, how do I mobilize the relationship? Again, I showed you in that slide. It was something as simple as sending an email to Rachel that enabled me to really figure out what I wanted to do with my career. But it was something as simple as an email that helped me to mobilize that. And lastly, Miss Balcombe, and I think this one is probably the best one because it's the one that's easiest for you to do. And so what I want you to imagine is I want you to imagine a teacher that you could go to today that embodies all those characteristics that you read about at the very beginning of the slide deck. And I just want you to think about who's that teacher? What are they a role model for? What kind of characteristics do they embody? So knowing Miss Balcombe also opened me up to the network of Latin teachers that were here in Arizona. When I was just starting out as a Latin teacher here in Arizona, knowing Miss Balcombe opened up that door to knowing all the other Latin teachers. And so Miss Balcombe had expertise in one area and another Latin teacher had a different expertise in another area. And so now I had access to that entire network because I just knew one person. All it takes is one person. The quality of my relationships, right? When I needed help with teaching Latin, right? It's a dead language, like what middle schooler wants to learn a dead language, right? I went to Miss Balcombe and I asked her for advice. When I think about the structure of the relationship, Ms. Balcom was an exemplary teacher. She taught my subject area. I went to her when I needed advice. And then lastly, mobilizing the relationship. I always knew Ms. Balcom was a phone call away. And so whenever I needed help, right, like I didn't hesitate to reach out to her. And so you have to remember that a role model is not a person, not who a person is, but what a person does. And so just reflect on some of these questions. I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to reflect on some of these questions. When I think about the type of person I want to be, some words that come to mind are when I think about the problems that I want to solve in the future, they are and so now that you have those two things together, I want you to think, who do I need to know that exhibit the traits of the person I want to be and the problems I want to solve? So how do you find those people? Well, you can look close and far, right? There were people close to in my life. Those were my parents. But Rachel was an entire email away. She worked at the Arizona Department of Education. You can also find virtual role models. You don't necessarily need to know the person on a personal level. You might have people that are inspirational that you just want to follow because their life story is super exciting and interesting to you. You should attend events on topics that you are interested in and meet different people. You should join organizations with strong mentoring opportunities. For me, that was Educators Rising. If you're interested in healthcare, maybe it's HOSA. If you're interested in business, maybe it's FBLA or DECA. And if you're interested in agriculture careers, maybe it's Future FFA, right? So those organizations already exist at your schools and in your communities. Finally, you should think about finding individuals who are experts on things you are interested in or careers you want to pursue, and people that aren't, because there are some people who are going to be great for those careers and things you're interested in, and then you'll also want role models who are just generally good people. Remember, role models can be of any age. They can be a friend you have next door. They can be someone who's way older than you. They can even be someone who's younger than you. And finally, and I think this is the biggest point with anything, especially when you're younger, don't be afraid to introduce yourself first. With my parents, I didn't really have a choice. They kind of met me first, right? But with Rachel, I introduced myself to Rachel. To Miss Balcom, that one was right kind of by my enrollment in her course, but reaching out to Rachel changed the entire trajectory of my professional career. And so don't be afraid to reach out to your mentors or to your role models first, because they'll be responsive to you. And the worst they can say is no. And so if I could give you any advice, that last bullet point is the biggest one about finding role models, is don't be afraid to introduce yourself first, because the people in your life that really want to be there, the ones that are going to be role models for you, are the people that are willing to accept you, take you in and under their wing as you're exploring what you want to do and be with your life. Thank you.
Thanks, Lennon. All right, we did get quite a few questions, so I'm gonna leave these here so you can sort of think through them. But the very first one, I thought this was a really interesting question, is will you keep teaching after you get your PhD?
I think so. I love teaching high school. My high schoolers ask me this all the time. I think I need a bit more time in the classroom. I started teaching really young. So I started teaching in Mesa Public Schools when I was 19. Then I ended up moving to Boston at 20. And I just don't think I've had enough time in the classroom yet. So I definitely think I'll be teaching after I'm done with my PhD.
That makes my educator heart sing, I can tell you that. What was your favorite part about attending college?
I think meeting other people my own age. We just had this whole conversation about role models. But I also think there's something so strong and powerful about meeting other people your own age who are interested in the careers you're interested in too. You attend classes with them, right? Like at ASU, we lived in the dorms with people who shared the same majors as us. And so I think my favorite part of attending college was getting to meet not only role models, because obviously when you go to college, you meet different people who are older than you, who are professors, who have connections to the community. Remember, it only takes one person to build all of those other relationships, but you also met other people who are going to be the future workforce with you. I met future teachers, I met future Latin teachers, I met future Spanish teachers. And so my favorite part about attending college was getting to not only meet role models, but also the people who are going to be role models for other people when eventually.
Love that. Lifelong friends,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Love that. Okay, we did have someone ask, how can I start an Educators Rising chapter at my school?
Oh, that's a good question.
Great.
You should go to ed rising rising az.org. And there's more information on that website about how to start an Educators Rising chapter. And there's lots of contacts, and there's actually the state conference is coming up in March. And so if you're thinking about trying to meet people maybe before you start the chapter, there's a state conference coming up in March.
Those CTE state conferences are so much fun.
Yes, they are.
I love
Yeah.
that. Okay, next question. Do you still look for role models as a grown-up?
Absolutely. There are a lot, and as a grown-up, it's hard because like I feel like you say grown up and like people are always like, am I really grown up? But I think, yes, absolutely. And that's why I said role models can be of any age, because once you start to enter the workforce, you realize it doesn't work like school. Sometimes your boss is younger than you. Sometimes your boss is way older than you. And those people are still role models because it doesn't matter about their age. It matters about the characteristics that they embody. Are they inspiring? Are they people that do things that I want to do? Do they embody the characteristics I want to embody? And so absolutely. So I think about right now my own role models that are and again, I work in such an interesting field. Like I just talked about like how schools don't work that way, or how real life sometimes doesn't work like schools, but in schools, sometimes it does work like that. So I think about my co-teachers who I work with, like Miss Veronica, who's the preschool teacher next door, who's been helping my CTE class the past couple of years. So my kids in the high school class go to the preschool and hang out with the preschoolers and work with the preschoolers. And I would consider Miss Veronica a role model because she's a dedicated teacher. She's really good at what she does. And so absolutely. And as an adult, I think role models are even more important because as you're thinking about your career and the careers you want to pursue and the things you want to solve, having all of those role models will open up. Again, it only takes one to build those big networks, but and you have to have multiple role models because not every role model is going to be that network for everything.
There you go. And so with that in mind, as a grown-up, how do you feel about being called a role model by your students?
Oh, I think I would hope my students think I'm a role model. I think I think my students hopefully see me as energetic. I hope they see me as someone who makes them consider, even if they don't want to be, consider being a teacher. And I think it makes you feel humbled, but it also makes you feel like, you know, the work you do, you feel it like right here. The work you do every day should make you feel something right here. Like it should make you feel warm. It should make you feel good. And so, and if your work doesn't feel like that, finding ways in your community to find those opportunities. And so I feel great about it. And I hope to continue it throughout the school year.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lennon, for being here. Thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to the JA Inspire team. We would be happy to pass those along to Lennon. And we will see you guys, no webinar in December, but we'll see you here on January 31st for our next webinar. Have a great holiday.